where we are as a team and what we did this week with the players. Certainly, I think that's probably different for every club, and I think maybe we were a little bit unique on that accord also. Obviously, just to start the week, really heartfelt sadness. Learning about Jamie Samuelson and his passing. So again, Stoney and Wojo, I know everybody that worked with Jamie, and I said it earlier in the week, what an amazing guy that he was. So just thoughts and prayers with his wife and his family as they go through this, and obviously everybody that that worked with him. So I know that's that aches in everybody's hearts because of what a tremendous person he was. So want to make sure I just mentioned that real quick here first. But got going here this week with the players in the building. So we actually decided, a couple of the different rules that we had based on the league and the PA agreements. At the start of the week, we left our roster at 90 and just tried to feel that it was important for us to have the players in the building before we tried to make any decisions and give ourselves some time to be able to go through and take a look at everyone. As hard as it is, just the minimal opportunities we had, but just thought we had such a really good spring with everybody and really wanted to get a chance to meet everybody and see what it looked like. So we had a little bit of a difficult task when you have 90 on your roster. You had to split the team up into two groups. And then within those two groups, I split the team up again. So we really wound up being 4 teams that were rolling through the building through the course of the day. Started very early. The first team would come in. They would get their workouts in, their runs, their lifts, obviously any sort of treatment, any sort of recovery, things like that they needed. While that was going on, the second group was coordinated enough, or the second team was coordinated enough to come in and kind of move in a different part of the building than where the first team was, so that we could kind of clean and move the groups through, but really kind of keep them separate from that standpoint. And then in the middle of the day, we had actually like a deep clean through the course of the building for about 30, 45 minutes, where we actually went through the entire building, downstairs where the players are, and just completely tried to do that cleaning one more time. And then the afternoon group, which was actually designated as group number 2 by the league rules, was also broken up into 2 teams. And then those 2 teams really did the same thing. So I would say a very busy building, a very busy day from that standpoint for the players, the coaches, the strength coaches. But I thought it was just really important for us to get through the first 10 to 14 days here from the initial report and testing date with our players to try to do everything we could to be safe and make sure that we were getting the testing protocols down and having a good idea of where we are with COVID exposure. And certainly from that standpoint, I figured it'd be good to start in smaller groups. So as we go through camp, we'll certainly obviously increase the groups and the amount of guys we have working with each other. And then certainly at some point, we'll get to the full 80 guys out on the field together in a practice format. But right now, just being the first and foremost for us is to be safe, be healthy, see how everything works in the building, and also kind of, I don't want to say soft open the building, but be able to put a group of maybe 20 to 30 guys in the building at one time, make adjustments before we get, a larger group of 40, say, and then all the way to 80. And just try to keep everybody, the feedback, coming in so that we can improve it as we go. So it's been interesting. It's been busy from that standpoint. Obviously, great to see everybody's faces and really some of the new guys trying to identify everybody with masks on. Our guys have been great wearing the masks in the building and during the workouts and stuff. So I know they're really taking all that very serious. And, from that standpoint, just itching to get on the field. I know it's coming. We'll get there eventually, but, we're just taking our time to make sure, again, safe and healthy from COVID. And also on top of that, really soft tissue injuries, which is something else that we're really conscious of coming up from, especially the 2011 season, trying to use some of the data and some of the stuff that we did during that year to try to make sure we limit the amount of soft tissue injuries before we actually get to practice.
All right, let's go, Tim. First question.
Hey, Coach, thanks for taking the time. 2 quick ones. Amongst those 4 groups, do you split positions up as well? Meaning, all the quarterbacks aren't together, maybe a couple quarterbacks in one group, one in another group, and linebackers and so forth and such?
Yeah, great question. And definitely, one of the things trying to figure it out, how we were going to do all that. The first parameters when you stayed at 90 came from the league in regards to, let's call it rookies, first-year players, any injured players from last season, and then quarterbacks. That could technically be what was made up of Group 1. And then Group 2 was veteran players. Within that, what we decided to do, the quarterbacks was the one group you could spread out amongst those two groups, and being in the world of trying to keep those guys separate from each other right now, we did do that. Within those groups, group 1 and group 2, that's where we split them up into 2 teams. And with that first group, with the young guys, kind of put them together in one area, certainly knowing that with the rookie class, trying to almost like make up a little bit of time there and treat it like a rookie mini camp from a standpoint of walk through time. And then that allowed us to have some meetings, virtual meetings with them in the afternoon to try to catch them up on some of the information while the veterans were in running and lifting. So we did try to do that and split those guys up mostly by really years in the league so that we would get the randomization of the positions so that it wasn't everybody in the same position at the same group working out, and try to limit that contact exposure right now until we get through that 10 to 14 day period.
And then real quick, we talked to Jamie Collins yesterday, and, we talked about his, position, where he plays, what he's done in the past. And he's like, wherever they want me, I'll play. Was that really his value to you guys? And you look what he did in New England and even Cleveland a little bit too, but especially in New England, just playing defensive tackle and edge and all 4 linebacker spots. Is that his value, and is that your plan for him as well?
Well, I mean, certainly, you love that attitude. You love everything that Jamie brings to the field and off the field, and his intelligence is really what makes him, so flexible and so dangerous when you get out into that game. Obviously, his talent and his ability is off the charts. But it is really one of those things. I think I try to look at it through the lens of the quarterback, and what is the quarterback looking when he looks over there on defense. And I think Jamie Collins is definitely one of those guys that when the quarterback looks over to the other side of the defense, they try to figure out, okay, where is this guy and what is he doing? And I think when you can keep that moving or make it a variable for the quarterback each and every snap, that just adds to what the quarterback has to think about before that ball is being snapped into play. So when you can do things like that with players, and certainly Jamie is one of those guys, it helps. But we also know that, he's just getting here. We haven't had a spring. We're trying to put some new pieces together, obviously with Corey, coming in as the defensive coordinator and trying to, make sure that he's comfortable in the things that we're doing. Also, as, he teaches it to the players. We want to make sure that we just take it at the right pace, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
So Stacey Dale's next.
Coach, it's great to see you too. I have 2 things for you. I guess the first thing, Matthew, of course, was on pace for a career season last year. How is I know you're limited on the field right now, but how is the football coming out? And, what have you sort of seen in his directive this offseason? And then just your impressions of DeAndre Swift so far.
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously, last year with Matthew, didn't go the way we wanted it to go, but certainly his drive, his competitiveness, I knew, he'd be right back at it as soon as he could. So, just keeping him healthy and making sure that he went into the offseason as safe as possible was important for us. And certainly through training camp, as we go with him, knowing the offseason was limited, we want to make sure with all of our quarterbacks that we have a real smart plan for all of them. He certainly I knew probably in the spring sometime that, he tells me, hey, I'm good, coach. There's no issue whatsoever. Like, I'm good with that. He knows his body, his arm, his, all of that better than anybody, and nobody works harder. This guy loves football. I love it when he calls me and says, hey, I'm going to go throw this or work this out, or I'm going to go grab these guys and do this. And just, almost like that football junkie mentality. I mean, you just love it. You just love his passion and grind for the game. So, we'll be ready to go. I just, would like to get out to practice. That's kind of the first part. Swift, certainly, very excited to have him in the building. Certainly from the running back position, I think, with a rookie, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to go over. There's a lot of information. We've done as much as we could virtually there, but it would be good to see that when that actually gets to live, practice reps, and to see the reaction time to that, not only when he has the ball in his hands, but when he doesn't, and to be able to get into different positions and see defenses and recognize some of the things that we do in the NFL that may be a little bit different for him. But really hardworking guy. Honestly, all these young guys, along with the older guys, they've taken the older veterans lead and just have worked extremely hard on the Zoom calls and tried to learn as much information as possible. And that's what's kind of crazy is we're just getting back to everybody in the building, but we're still doing meetings virtually. We're still trying to keep everybody in this world until we really feel we're ready to move into that next kind of in-person meeting situation.
Mike Rothstein.
Hey, Matt. A couple questions. First, obviously, Matthew had the false positive. For you, how did you handle that? And did that almost give you some sort of preparation for what could happen theoretically if that happens in week 1 or week 2 or week 3? And then after you answer that, I'll get to the second question.
Okay. I mean, obviously the situation for us with him and the testing procedures, honestly, like once that happens and we just go through it step by step, the first and foremost concern for me is his health, his family's health, Kelly and the kids, and making sure that they're okay. And that's as far as it goes right there. And once we kind of sort through that, then it's about, okay, hey, what is the procedure here? Is there something that we think maybe a little bit different? How do we go about handling it? And honestly, after that, I know the league is working really hard to try to do everything they can to, monitor and adjust as they go, certainly. And we're trying to do everything we can to, give feedback. And I think that's the great part about it right now. There's been a lot of calls, a lot of conversation. I think the league is doing a great job of listening to all the different unique situations that all of the clubs have had and trying to adjust with it. So, after we get through that, for me, it was really about just making sure that, I could really feel his situation, his family situation, and, how much that just hurt to watch or listen to what they had to go through. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew, hey, we fully support him and his family. And, we want to make sure that everybody understands what this is and that there's no, wrong narrative out there. And not to, just prejudge on those things because it's about people. It's about people. It's not about a number. It's not about, something that's written on a test sheet right now. It's about making sure that everybody's okay. And that's really what goes through my head.
And I think we hit on this a little bit last week, but with your coaches specifically, have any of your coaches said they wanted to opt out or have a change in role this year? And what is your protocol if they do at some point? Can they do that theoretically 3 weeks from now if things spike in Michigan? Yeah, great question. And I think that's something that just like everybody in this organization, I think you have to have those conversations and just, some of it you may not necessarily have the answers for right now. There is no protocol in place from the league as far as coaches are concerned, but, as an organization, we have definitely had internal discussion as far as, what would that look like and how do we respond? Some of it certainly is, we'll have those conversations, and obviously we want to be able to move forward as a team to make sure that, we're operating at a highly efficient manner. But situations can change, and something that may be outside of the building that might change, and you just have to listen and understand and support. We're dealing with a really, obviously, very real situation, and people's experiences range from all over the place. And, I think for me, and obviously I have a, amazing family, my wife and our kids. I'm certainly concerned for their health and safety every single day also. So it's not so much as far as, obviously we have a job to do. All of us are trying to do the best we can within that job. But it's just about listening and understanding and supporting. And quite frankly, this is something that's on my head right now. I was walking through the building last night and ran into one of the ladies that cleans the buildings and wonderful, wonderful people that we have in this building and have had. And a lot of times those guys that come in at night, the cleaning crews, they're the ones that I see the most, during the course of the season and get caught up with. And I haven't seen any of them in 6 months. And I saw one of the ladies and she, very, very really told me a story about she lost her husband to COVID. And quite frankly, for me, that hit me really hard to understand that, like, hey, this is about people. We have to listen to everybody's unique situations and situations to make sure that everybody's safe. So it's not just, hey, what makes it easy for us or how do we move as a football team? It's about how do we help people right now? Because, that's real. Just to be clear, though, so no coaches have opted out. That's we have no, nothing to report on that end. Nope. Okay.
All right, we'll go 4 more with Dave, Chris Burke, Justin, then Nick.
Morning, Matt. No, that's pretty powerful having somebody in your building lose somebody to COVID. Really makes it personal there. 2 follow-ups, just actually both questions that Mike sort of asked. We saw Doug Peterson, test positive, and Sean Payton back in the spring. I'm sure you've gone over various scenarios, but what is the plan with you your staff for that matter, if you're sidelined, by COVID, who takes over as coach for the week, for a game, and do you stay virtual with like that person or your coordinators just in case during game weeks?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, two-part question there. I would say really the first part of it is something that we started talking about really in the summer, to be honest with you, as far as what would we do if those certain scenarios came up. And we put a plan in place, and we have kind of a mode to go into, certainly if something happens to myself, who would kind of push the different sort of team meetings that we have. And then certainly also from a signal caller standpoint in all three phases, if something was to happen there. And so back in the summer, talked about it, put a plan in place, and then really it would be a little bit unique situation during training camp. Although I would say in general, we tend to do this as part of our philosophy is make sure the next man is ready to go. That's not only on the football field with the players, but we have always had that with the coaching staff too, kind of next man up mentality. So we'll probably put a little bit more emphasis on it during training camp, and maybe it's a period of practice where one of the other coaches calls the plays or something along those lines. But yeah, put that all of that protocol in place and those procedures. Hopefully everybody just stays healthy and we don't have to use them, but we're ready to go from that standpoint. One of the things also that we're doing right now to kind of get to the second part of the question is we have a lot of technology right now that we're wearing all over our body. We have tracking systems, we have tracers there. We have rings that kind of predict certain symptoms. We're using a lot of different, smartware technology to help us. So for our current situation, what we've done through the course of the weeks is just run sample sort of examples. What if this person was infected? What if this person, what does the contact tracing look like? And then from there to try to gauge the meetings, the setups, the rooms, and also then with the smaller groups in the building of players, and as we build towards the full team, where are those touch points where it does get critical that maybe there's too much time being exposed to another person that may be, testing positive, and how do we change those? Is it a virtual situation? Is it a larger room that they need to be in? Is it something where, honestly, it's just some of it's behavior changing, where you just you talk to somebody and then realize, hey, I'm just going to take 2 more steps backwards and just make sure that we're at a safe distance. One of the things that we did a great job of, I think, and are continually trying to do is mask education. There's so many different types of masks right now that we're, trying to utilize all of those in different situations. Certainly when you have to coach and yell and you're kind of on the field and the exposure possibilities are higher. Some of your protection is different in the type of mask that you can wear. But honestly, if you're in some of the classroom settings or the hallway, the N95 grade masks, we're wearing them, because they protect not only you from the other person, but that person from you. And also trying to experiment a little bit with, not that I struggle too much with trying to project my voice, but, microphones, if we have to use those in the classroom to be able to have enough space. You guys know our building, so it's a little bit easier to explain to you guys. We have an amazing indoor facility that we actually are right now converting and have converted into different classroom settings. And that so that we have that sort of open space to be able to teach and coach, maybe hopefully in a safer environment.
Can you share who what the fallback plan is for you if you're out, or Daryl if he's out to call plays?
I think I'll probably keep that one to me right now. I do appreciate that question very much so. But yeah, I mean, I think it was really something, honestly, that a lot of the head coaches started talking about in the summer in some of our conversations. And so really, I almost feel like that we've hit that maybe a couple months ago. But it was it's a big, important part of the game to make sure that we have all of those different areas handled. Yep.
The other thing I want to ask just real quick is talking about the Stafford situation. What can be done about that? False positives. I mean, on the one hand, that can play a ton of havoc on a season, but on the other, you have to be safe. So what's the solution do you think that can be done about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And your solution is probably just as good as mine right now. So I'm going to let the people that are highly qualified to work on those procedures, handle them. And I would just say this, the reassurance that I've gotten is that, and through the calls that we've had, is that they are trying to come up with the best way to adjust and monitor and go forward. So that's the part of it for me that I'm encouraged by. That's the part of it that I'll rely on for them to, really look at it and say, hey, what can we do to make sure that we've got all this right?
Thank you.
Yep.
Chris Burke.
Hey, Matt. Disappointed you took the Burleson jersey down from behind you. I just had a quick one sort of on the planning side here. Figured I'd ask you so I can stop bugging Eamon about it. Heard a couple other coaches mention that they were going to use their stadiums for scrimmages, and just to get a feel for what that's like so they don't show up week one and have to get used to everything. Just curious if that's on the planning for the next month.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, it's interesting when you look at the league and you look at all the different teams. And one of the things that we're doing is trying to, there's no kind of handbook for this, right? Everyone's doing it for the first time. So you try to get as much information as possible what other teams are doing. So the teams that have been able to move into their stadiums and use their stadiums as, training camp sites and protocols are already set up in those buildings. They kind of have that already comfort feeling in that stadium for what it may be, the procedures and the protocols will look like on game day. Being that obviously we're doing everything here in our facility, we do need to go to the stadium at some point, and we do need to see the changes that we are going to put in effect to make everybody, feel safe and make sure everybody understands these are the things that'll change. So that's not happening on the first day of the season, against the Bears. So we're working through the timeline for that and probably have narrowed it down to somewhere, at the end of August and maybe the first, couple of days or so in September. It's a tricky thing, right? So you try to really put a timeline on, call it, wherever that third preseason game was going to be to make sure that you're having a really good, strong practice from an evaluation standpoint. But certainly when you get in that highly competitive mode, for me personally, I want to be on grass. So, it's safer in some of the different injury situations. But I think that we do need to go down to the stadium, maybe in a follow-up to that sort of timeline and schedule, and be able to practice at a high level, in the stadium, feel the turf, be used to, what it looks like. But then also, be able to see the locker room and what that's going to be like and how we're going to adapt and really take a lot of our practices. It really gives us a couple weeks here in this building to see what it's going to look like when we have all 80 in the locker room, to be able to go down there and take some of the things that are really working well and apply them down there. And maybe there's things that, we just can't do down there in that situation. And certainly with an 80-man roster, it's going to look a lot different than when we get into, game day active rosters, and knowing that we're going to have to adjust that a little bit, when we get the full team down there.
Go Justin, then Nick.
Hey, Matt. Good morning.
Good morning.
You talked about the practical response and thinking ahead in the instance that somebody in the coaching staff were to contract the virus. But when you do see Doug Peterson test positive, I think anybody that's talked to you this offseason knows how seriously you've taken precautions. What is, your personal or your emotional reaction to a situation like that?
Obviously, my first reaction was I called Doug. Just wanted to make sure he was okay. I just checked in. Hey, man, you all right? What's going on? Just sometimes it may be just a text message just to get that reassurance that that person's okay. That's probably my first reaction on all that stuff. Same thing with, Coach Payton, Sean, when he got it in the spring. You just go instantly, you pull yourself. These are colleagues. These are people you've known for a long time. You compete extremely hard with during the fall. But this is a different sort of level of situation. So just trying to make sure everybody's okay. If there's something you can do, some way to help out, something like that.
And then maybe I got lost in the shuffle this offseason, but you had an ownership change. Mrs. Ford decided to step down and hand the reins to Sheila. You've worked with Sheila closely over these 2 years. What, if anything, do you anticipate changing on that front with how you, would interact with ownership?
Yeah, Sheila's been amazing. She's been so wonderful to me from day one when I got here, and my family, and just taking a really strong interest in us settling into the area and getting used to everything out here. And then certainly, from that standpoint, she's working really hard to obviously step into that role. And, I'm trying to just work closely with her to give her as much information as I can as we push forward. But I really, Mrs. Ford is amazing, and I'm so blessed for her and thankful for her. And Sheila, obviously, it's the same. I'm thankful for that entire family that has allowed me to, try to have this opportunity to do what we can here. But I do think that the conversation has been great between Sheila and I. Her passion, her drive for everything about this organization. Obviously the football and what it looks like on the field, but also everything off the field, is great and something that I just see us trying to continually always trying to improve.
All right, Nick, last question.
Morning, Matt. Thanks for doing this. Quick football one for you. We talked to Jared Davis earlier this week about his role, working with Jamie, all that stuff. When you guys get back out on the field, what are you sort of looking for from Jared, and could his role expand at all this season, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, great question. I think JD, he's obviously a cornerstone of a lot of things that we do. He's been a tremendous player here, both on and off the field. Certainly, I think for me, I'm excited when we get all these guys on the field because JD is an extremely, extremely competitive person. And I think now he has some very competitive people around him that I think are going to it'll be interesting when we get everybody out there. We haven't had a spring, so nobody knows what it looks like. And I think that anticipation of putting everybody in that space and seeing what the position drills look like, seeing what the team periods look like, that's exciting. Certainly JD has a little bit of advantage on everybody because of the communication of some of the things that we do on defense. I think, he's very vocal on the field. He makes a lot of adjustments on a lot of calls. And certainly one more year of that, I think, hopefully will help the game slow down for him from a mental standpoint, allow him to use all of his natural ability and speed to go play fast on the field. But I do think, like you mentioned with Jamie, who has great knowledge of this defense also, and his communication, that'll certainly help. And another year for Christian Jones, and obviously another year for Jelani, really all the way down. Jalen Reeves-Maven. I mean, these guys were just getting more and more reps with the communication, and hopefully that allows everyone just to play faster. And certainly someone, with JD's physical skills, playing faster than he already plays could be really great.